Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and it's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review here on First Coast Connect. Among our topics today, public pressure grows on the city's former council finance chair after reporting on issues around his own finances. Duval's superintendent is no longer citing a $100 million deficit just 1 year after it prompted school closures. Local homeowners sue the nation's largest builder, citing misleading sales tactics, saying they led to inflated mortgage payments. Prosecutors clear an officer who mistakenly shot an unarmed teen, saying he was partly to blame. And 3 major downtown projects see cost overruns, from MOSH to the Four Seasons to the Stadium of the Future. To talk about all that and more, I am joined by Megan Mallicoat, education reporter at Jacksonville Today. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning, Ann.
Nikisha Williams, former TV producer and author of The 7 Daughters of Dupree, upcoming this next year. Nikisha, welcome.
Hi, good morning.
And David Bauerlein, Metro reporter at the Florida Times-Union. Hi, David.
Good morning.
We're also being joined via video by Tiffany Salome, anchor and investigative reporter at News4Jax. Tiffany, good morning.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So we're going to start with a story that's been developing over several weeks. And we should say, a lot of this news has been originating with our colleagues at Action News Jax. They've been doing a lot of reporting on this. Several stories about the finances of City Council Finance Chair Raul Arias. He has since stepped down from that role. Now some want him to relinquish another leadership role. So, David, first of all, what did Raul Arias say about why he chose to step down as the City Council's finance chair?
Yeah, his explanation is that partly it was just a distraction in terms of all the media reports. And so he just decided to clear the deck, basically, by stepping down as the finance committee chairman. He has, repeatedly said that he has done, nothing wrong in terms of what he's done. I mean, the issue, I think, is that he sold a company that does media in 2023. So he says he has no ownership stake or any interest or any financial ties at all to it.
This is Bold City Media.
Bold City Media. And, and there's nothing that stops a company that was previously owned from a council member from seeking city business. I mean, there's no prohibition against that. The issue that's come up is to the extent that Raul Arias has sort of, quote, connected people who are, with Bold City Media and as a potential client of Bold City Media, and whether, while they're also, those entities also are in line for city contracts or city funding. And so that's really where the issue is in terms of, is there any kind of wrongdoing or anything of ethical nature. So that's the way I understand the reporting Action News has done on it.
All right. We should say we reached out early yesterday to invite Arias to join the program or to respond, and we didn't hear back, but he has, as David said, strongly denied any improper actions. He said that he wanted to return his focus to his district, and that he will remain on 5 other committees, including the Community Benefits Agreement Committee. Now, that's the committee that is tasked with basically creating legislation to guide some, almost $100 million worth of benefits throughout the community, a big chunk of it going to the Eastside. And so this last week, there was some concerns from some members of the Eastside saying that Arias should step down from that committee as well. There was a interview with the vice president of the Together Eastside Coalition Incorporated, Latavia Harris. She talked to our partners at News4Jax. Let's listen to what she had to say.
We think that it's imperative for him to step down is because those are some of the things that I said in the beginning, that we didn't want to have these type of issues. And the fact that he's no longer chair to the mayor, city council's finances, we don't need him sitting as chair to ours.
Now, it's important to note there is within the Eastside community, Nikisha, kind of a developing rift between the group that Ms. Harris is associated with, which is this incorporated Eastside Coalition, and this unincorporated group, which in many ways kind of has been around a little bit longer, has been organized a little bit longer, and has been pretty active in advocating for the East Side. That said, I mean, so Ms. Harris doesn't speak for everybody on the East Side, but is there reason for the East Side community? I mean, that's what the incorporated group has said, is we really don't want any negative associations as we are starting out on what is going to be a game changer for the East Side. We don't want any kind of bad news attached to it. We don't want any problems, potential illegalities. Like, they want to be just very careful, as is sort of in their argument.
I got an email about this late last night. Acknowledging the rift between the Together Eastside Coalition Incorporated, which was formed within the last year or so, and then the unincorporated group, which has been working in the community for a number of years, that started with pastors and ministers and community stewards and business owners that are in the area, as well as the organization Lift Jacks. With all of that said, and noting the rift, one thing that, the unincorporated group wants it to be clear is that, one person doesn't speak for everybody in the East Side. There's also some ruffled feathers because some people in the incorporated group don't actually reside on the East Side. So I'm going to go to the residents who actually live out east. What do they want? And I think whoever, no matter the rift between the two groups, that's something that needs to be settled. But what do people who actually live and work and raise children and own businesses and are committed to investing in their own community, what do they want?
Well, so do they support Arias? Are they advocating for, are they troubled by his association chairing the special committee on the community benefits agreement?
I haven't heard that they're troubled by Arias or that or his stewardship of the community benefits agreement. I think their biggest concern is that they do not want corporate stakeholders, even those who are backed or have some connection to city council, coming in and dictating to the members of the East Side who actually live and reside there what they are going to do. The people of the East Side want a seat at the table. Now, who's leading that table? It should not be Councilman Arias or Joe Carlucci or whoever else is appointed. It should be members of the East Side, and I think that is their point.
Yeah, and David, that is what is going forward now. I believe that this week's meeting of the special committee, I mean, one thing that was interesting was it was the second meeting of the CBA committee where they didn't take public comment. And there were a lot of people queued up with speaker cards who were not allowed to speak. So that was kind of one issue. But the committee has sort of now made its recommendation to the city council, the special committee, about how this oversight group should be formed. And it's my understanding that it aligns with sort of the older group, the non-incorporated group of the East Side, what they wanted, the model.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, as I understand it, the request or demand, whatever you want to phrase it, for Raul Arias to step down as chairman of the Community Benefits Agreement came a few days before the meeting that happened on Wednesday, and that was the last meeting. The committee is over. I think they called it Community Benefits 2.0 because the successor to the first Community Benefits Agreement. So they have now handed off their legislation to City Council. And there'll be a nonprofit, as I understand, set up. So he's no longer chairman of the Community Benefits Agreement Committee because there is no CBA committee anymore.
What about his decision to step down as finance chair? How significant of a development is that for someone? I mean, that is a natural launching point for council presidency. It's a very powerful position. To relinquish that mid-term, does that tell us anything about his political future?
Yeah, I don't know. It is unusual. I mean, I can't think of a time where somebody has done that. It could be that it's happened. He is still a member of the Finance Committee, so he still has a vote, but he's no longer the chair who kind of sets the agenda, so to speak, and has some powers that come with the chair to defer legislation, et cetera. But no, it's very significant that would happen. And you have that kind of a turnover on arguably the highest, most impactful committee on city council has. I don't know what it says about his political future, and in terms of, I'm sure he's going to run for re-election. I don't know that he has any plans to seek anything other than reelection to city council when his current term ends in a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, we will keep an eye on that issue. And obviously, we'll be continuing to watch both the development of the community benefits agreement and the rift on the east side. We did also, Nikisha, get a number of emails last night that were sort of addressing, who should be driving that conversation and who sort of has the longevity, who resides in the community. That's going to continue to be an issue. We should say we have invited both sides on to discuss this issue, and we were in fact scheduled to have a discussion with both sides. The original non-incorporated group hasn't yet been able to schedule it. They kind of had to reschedule, and so we're still waiting on that. But obviously, that's something that we're very interested in and hope to get to. If you're just joining us, we're talking to our panel of journalists about the week's headlines. You can join the conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org, where you can find all the ways to connect with us easily. I want to move on now to an issue that you've been covering, Tiffany Salome. I'm going to bring you in via video here. This has to do with Florida home owners who have now filed a class action suit against the nation's largest home builder, D.R. Horton. Tell us what they are alleging. Why are they suing?
Yeah, so new construction typically in Florida is just all around a more affordable option for people when it comes to getting their monthly payments down. And essentially what this lawsuit alleges is that D.R. Horton was engaged in some type of monthly payment suppression scheme. What that means is that the property taxes weren't properly included in these homeowner estimates as far as monthly payments go. So what we started hearing from our local community, dozens of people just constantly emailing us once we started reporting on this issue. Oh, this happened to me. It's not just a matter of a couple $100 in some cases. For most people, it was $700, $800, $900. And like the most severe case I heard was almost $1,300 a month that their mortgages went up all of a sudden. And they were seemingly blindsided with this, hence a now class action lawsuit. And attorneys from the National Consumer Law Center are actually leading this lawsuit. And it is based in Florida. So what's important to understand from the many experts I talked to when researching this subject is that the mortgage lending arm attached to D.R. Horton was also involved in this. And many of these homeowners report that just months or sometimes even weeks after signing the papers for their dream homes, their mortgages were sold to a different service provider. And that's when the red flags started popping up. The new service provider is actually the one that said, hey, wait a second, your escrow is negative and you're going to need to pay a lot more money a month to make up for that shortfall.
So Tiffany, the numbers were really extraordinary that you reported. One homeowner saw a monthly payment increase of 45%, almost 45%, instead of, $2,100 jumped to $3,100. And I guess what you have found and what they're alleging in this lawsuit, or at least what you found they are alleging in this lawsuit, is that this lending arm of D.R. Horton called DHI Mortgage may have been using unimproved tax estimates as opposed to improved tax estimates. Can you tell us about kind of how that changes once a home is built, how those assessments are done, and how much that can impact someone who's buying a home?
Absolutely. So when you buy a new construction home, typically the taxes are assessed on a vacant piece of land because no construction has happened there. There's not a home there yet. So by the time the home comes up, it's not until January of next year that the taxes are reassessed. And that's when you'll see a jump from, let's say, about $20,000 to $30,000 to all of a sudden $400,000 you should be paying taxes on. Now, when they are calculating these mortgage payments for homeowners who are buying these D.R. Horton homes, it seems like there was a missing piece somewhere. Now, whether it was done intentionally or not is under investigation. And I should note that DHI Mortgage and D.R. Horton both deny these claims. And they say that this was not done intentionally. But lawyers seem to think they have a case proving otherwise. So it's very important when you're buying a new construction home to ask those questions. And you can estimate this yourself by going to the Duval County Property Appraiser's website. It's just a matter of protecting yourself and not being blindsided when these payments happen, or when these payments are reassessed after a year, rather. And you might not know what your home's value is going to be in a year's time, but you can estimate it by looking at other neighborhoods around you and comparing similar homes.
That's really good advice, Tiffany, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. You mentioned, that D.R. Horton and its lending arm have, said that this was not intentional or perhaps not a pattern. The people who are suing, you've reported, are doing so saying that they want relief and they want changes to the company's sales practices under something that could be done under the RICO Act. But currently, this is not a criminal case. This is a civil lawsuit. Do we know if there's any investigation happening? Is anybody looking into this from a criminal standpoint?
Right. I'm not sure of that. It's a great question, Anne. And what we know from attorneys at the National Consumer Law Center leading this lawsuit is that we're still in the very early stages and the lawsuit still needs to be certified. So I do get a lot of questions from people saying, hey, this happened to me. I want to join in on this lawsuit. We are not there yet. And typically with class actions, if you are eligible to join and receive monetary relief, that does happen automatically. And you'll receive some piece of mail or maybe an email telling you how to join. And obviously there's a lot of people out there, it seems like, that want to get their piece of the pie, but we're just still in the very, very early stages. I will say it's just so alarming how many people have reached out with the same stories. I mean, these are veterans in our communities, teachers, first-time home buyers who essentially are having to forfeit their dream homes or even go into foreclosure because of this problem.
And so you've really been getting a strong response, Tiffany. That's interesting to know. I feel like anytime someone in this community does a home builder story, there's very often a huge follow-on. I found that in my own reporting. David, this is not just a Florida problem. This is not just a Florida home builder. But it is something that, in this market, in this time, could be particularly destabilizing to people who are making life-changing, life-altering housing choices.
Right. Yeah. For a while, the whole issue was during the housing bust was, people got mortgages that looked really affordable and then they weren't, and then they were upside down on them. In this case, it's not necessarily the mortgage itself or the rate for the loan. So it's just there's these other costs that evidently are not factored in when they get the bottom line of, can you afford this amount? And if I could just add one thing too, it's also a good thing to look at if you're buying an existing home. Sometimes people will look at the current property taxes paid on a home and think, oh, I can afford that. But really, like, I've lived in the home we own since the late 90s. So because of the Save Our Homes Amendment, it has really kept a lid on what the property taxes are. And as soon as the home is sold, all those savings disappear, and then you're paying your property taxes at the full value of that home. So sometimes I hear people kind of get blindsided by that as well.
Sure.
They assume whatever the property taxes are for the current homeowners, what I'll be paying. It doesn't work that way. You can really get caught off guard with that as well. So, people should really research the property taxes and understand, what am I actually going to be paying for this home when I move into it.
Sure, those taxes can really bite you. I was actually talking to a gentleman the other day who inherited a home from his mom. She was paying $2,000 a year, Nikisha, and after he got it, it went immediately to $14,000 a year in taxes.
And that's one of the things I think the company's taking advantage of a new home buyer's ignorance. And it's very reminiscent of the subprime mortgage crisis, which not only tanked the American economy, it tanked the global economy, right? And so D.R. Horton is not a builder that is just in Florida. It's nationwide. So how many new home buyers are looking at these rates and are looking at the mortgage payment, but not looking at the property taxes or the property insurance, which both are supposed to go into escrow. And then your mortgage servicer is then supposed to pay your property taxes and insurance out of that escrow amount. If they're depressing that value or not including it in the full breakdown of your mortgage, now your mortgage is sold to another servicer. And then they're like, well, wait, what is this?
Yeah.
This company was eating these costs, we don't do this, and now you owe us all this money. It's very easy for your mortgage payment to jump hundreds to thousands of dollars, and it takes a new home buyer by surprise because they may not even know what escrow is. Like, I had to refinance my house in my divorce, so technically I was a first-time home buyer, even though I had been in that home since 2013. And because something went wonky with the insurance, my mortgage payment went up about $1,000 for a year before I could be able to get to renegotiate for a lower insurance payment. So taking advantage of new home buyers' ignorance, depressing the value because you're selling more homes that way, and that makes you more profit on the front end for D.R. Horton and DHI Mortgage, and then blaming the consumer for their ignorance or for the lack of payment, and then they're being punished for it. I mean, it's a perfect storm of financial problems that then may take that home buyer years to dig themselves out of, especially if they have a foreclosure on their credit report.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, we are talking about the week's news with our panel of journalists. You're welcome to join our conversation. We have a call from Suzanne on the East Side. Good morning, Suzanne. Go ahead.
Good morning. This is Suzanne Pickett with Historic Eastside CDC. How are you guys?
Hi, Suzanne.
This morning.
Great.
Hi. I just want to thank you for the conversation. And Akeisha, thank you for the comment that what's important is that the residents make these decisions. Our organization is celebrating 10 years of work in the East Side next year, and I've been a part of this process for about 2.5 years of getting us to this point with the community benefits agreements. Our goal is to really get it executed and get these dollars into the community, as it is important with all the development that's happening in the stadium and around us to preserve and protect the heritage of the East Side. And so thank you for that.
Yeah, Suzanne, we should say that you are with sort of the unincorporated group, which is the longer standing group, and which Nikisha was saying is sort of more perhaps dug into the community. And I will ask you, because I asked her, what is the level of support for Raul Arias? I mean, did that matter before the work of this special committee was concluded this week?
Well, I concur about the comment that, that the process for the committee has been completed, and our goal is to just to move forward with it.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for your comments. We also have a call from Jason in San Marco. Good morning, Jason. Go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you. I just wanted to say that the homestead exemption is really important, and if you're buying a piece of residential real estate and the broker or the agent or the closing attorney or the closing assistant doesn't specifically mention it and discuss it with you, then while that is maybe not a borderline fraud, it's very unethical. I am a realtor. My broker requires that when we sell or purchase residential real estate, we have a disclosure that discusses the homestead exemption in detail, and we have to get that signed by our customer. If you're working with a broker and they're not talking to you about that before the closing, you should find another agent or another broker. Thank you for taking my call.
Thanks so much, Jason. Well, I do want to move on now to a topic that Megan Mallicoat has been covering really well and in depth. This is an issue that you've been looking at now for a few weeks, in part because the school district here in Duval County has really, I guess, changed its tune. I mean, a year ago this time, all we were hearing about was this enormous budget shortfall and how it was going to cripple the district, and really tough decisions had to be made. $100 million, $100 million.
Now we don't hear much about the $100 million. I don't think that the district would say that they have plenty of cash and, all the financial issues are fixed. That's not the case. But the talking point certainly switched from needing to close schools because of this, what the superintendent termed was a $100 million debt that couldn't go away without some drastic changes, to needing to close schools because it's inefficient to operate them at 700 or fewer students.
And so school closures remain top of mind for the district, but they're now saying that their budget is balanced?
Yes, they are. In a recent meeting where the CFO presented some figures to the board, the superintendent then also said that, they've changed some accounting practices so that when they bring a budget and show the numbers, they bring a truly balanced budget. This year's budget is balanced. And the risk for state takeover, which was another big talking point at the time, that if the district didn't get its finances under control, the state would come in and do it for them. Doesn't seem to be an issue at the moment, that they're well within the boundaries for continuing to manage their own finances.
And so I'm going to ask you, I mean, first of all, do we have a clear idea of, I mean, the school closures saved us a few $1 million, but nowhere near $100 million.
That's right. It was nowhere near $100 million. There were 3 schools that closed, that consolidated with another school, and actually closed at the end of the school year last summer. And together that figure saved, I think the estimate was approximately $3 million together. But the district also then presented some numbers recently to the school board. So since 2020, there have been 13 schools that closed since the summer of 2020. And those 13 schools that have closed collectively have saved over the course of this last 5-6 years, $22 million. But the tricky part with closing schools and then looking for the savings is that the students at those schools who are supposed to then go to the consolidated schools, they don't always go. Sometimes they leave the district. And so the district is estimating a loss of about 15% of its students.
Per school.
Right. And so anytime a school closes, a lot of them don't then continue on to the consolidated school, but about 15% on average actually leave the district entirely.
And so the idea that closing a school could save money is somewhat undercut by the fact that they're not going to get the same amount of money for those students because there aren't the same amount of students.
That's exactly right. So the state funding comes per student that you have enrolled. And so in the case of those 13 schools that have closed since 2020 with the $22 million savings, about 2/3 of that also left with the 15% of students that left. And so the total savings figure is less than $8 million over the last 5 years.
Out of 13 schools. And
Right.
so, big picture, Megan, first of all, what are school board members saying about this? I mean, they made some really tough decisions. They asked for a lot of community buy-in. They held a lot of community meetings. There was a lot of heartache over these choices. Do school board members feel satisfied with the answers that they're getting from administration about kind of what's happening here with this $100 million?
Well, so Darrell Willey did ask specifically about the $100 million talking point, and the CFO, laid out a few different things of, it was this and it was that, and we noticed if this trend would continue, then we'd be about $50 to $70 million short, but we still haven't gotten a good answer of then how did we jump to the $100 million talking point, and something that we're continuing to report.
But you don't feel like you've gotten necessarily an answer to how we resolved a $100 million deficit in a year.
No, because if you look at all the different changes that they've made, and there's been a few, it's been like closing those schools, switching to a 7-period day from an 8-period day for a lot of the secondary schools, things along those lines. The reported savings is nowhere near $100 million. So it's certainly something that we continue to look into.
Well, I'm very glad you're reporting on that. Nikisha, I want to just kind of raise this question because it is something that came out in Megan's reporting and something that came up in the comments that Darrell Willey made, which is, the schools, to a large extent, the schools that are facing closure are schools that are under attended right now. And so they're not operating capacity. A lot of those same schools were created during the school and this community's desegregation period, under court order to desegregate. The school district basically created schools targeting the Black community, particularly located in the Black community, in order to essentially prevent students from the Black community integrating white schools. And so a lot of these schools that are now half empty were sort of built by design. And so he raised that. I guess I just ask your thoughts on that.
I think there are a lot of things at play here. So these schools were created intentionally to keep Black students from integrating into more affluent schools and to force the integration from the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education ruling. So we have that at play. Then we also have the continued disinvestment in education and in community, really, in those neighborhoods of the Northwest Jacksonville and in Black neighborhoods. So that's also at play. And so when there's been continued disinvestment in education as well as the economic stability of the community, those parents who may still live there were already looking for other opportunities for their children to succeed education-wise. Then you have the advent of school choice and the state push for charter schools, which many parents, and voucher programs, which many parents have taken advantage of, which continue to leave public schools empty. So you had a community that was siloed and ghettoized. You have a community that took advantage of whatever programs the state pushed forward to try to create equal benefits for their children. And then now you have this problem of low enrollment. It's like, well, what do you want the community to do? Because they didn't create this problem. If we go back, 5 years ago when it was Superintendent Dr. Diana Green, and she was pushing for the half-cent sales tax, first in 2019, that finally got passed in 2020 to do the school improvement plan. A lot of the schools that she was trying to improve were in these very same neighborhoods that had been strategically disenfranchised and redlined and disinvested from to try to bolster their enrollment by not only beautifying the schools, but contributing economically to that area through education. And then now when that superintendent was pushed out, Dr. Bernier came in, who always had the patina of, racial undertones against him. Everybody was looking at him like he's not going to be for the community. And now we see 1-2 years into his tenure, he has not been for the Black community. When we were first talking about school closures last year, the majority of the schools on that list were in Black and brown neighborhoods. And the number was, well, we have to close these schools. It's going to be $100 million if we don't close these schools. The math ain't mathing, and something in the water ain't clean. That's just what it is. And so you can't help but look at, you're continuing to harm the very communities whose children need the most help, not just from an educational standpoint, but from an economic investment standpoint. And you refuse to do it. And you say, oh, well, now the budget is balanced and we're still going to close these schools and we're going to have to consolidate. But let it be that those children now have to be bused somewhere else. I bet you're going to see a lot of backlash from other parents.
Got a call from Tom on the west side. Good morning, Tom. Go ahead.
Yes. Good morning to you, too. Two things. One, this seems eerily similar to the JEA sale, where the JEA was supposedly in a death spiral, and then suddenly it wasn't. Here we have a deficit, and, they got the school board building sold, and, suddenly no deficit. Also, let me pick up on Nikisha's point, because I live in a mixed community, and there are 2 elementary schools within blocks of my house. No one's talking about closing them, so I totally agree with what she's saying.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate your call. David Bauerlein, this is, regardless of what the deficit is or is not, schools continue to face a real challenge in terms of funding. The state has changed a lot of the formulas. The half-cent sales tax that Nikisha referenced did eventually pass, but only after the state changed the rules so that now half that money for, what is collected must be divided with charter schools who may not have anywhere near the sort of infrastructure costs that these older schools do. And so it is putting the school district at a somewhat disadvantage in the age of the traditional public school district in somewhat of a disadvantage. And that probably isn't going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to. And picking up what Nikisha said, I know that was one of the arguments that the schools made at the time they got the half-cent sales tax was, first of all, it's a countywide program, but the bulk of the funding, the largest share of funding is going towards Northwest Jacksonville schools that were older, most outdated, most needed either massive improvements or replacement with new schools. I think part of the problem they've had is the estimates for what it would cost to build these schools. It turned out it's going to cost a lot more to build them. And so they've had to pay more, say, to build the high schools and middle schools there. They have opened some new schools there. I'm not aware that the school board has shifted or dropped schools from that plan, but if they have, then that would obviously be backtracking from what voters were promised. And that was the argument that, look, we've lost students, but when they see that their neighborhood school is the 21st century school with all those trappings, they're going to come back to the schools. I don't know if that's happened yet, but it made sense. It would make sense that would happen. I don't know that it has.
But I mean, that's the if you build it, they will come mentality. But when you close schools, you don't invest in the ones that are there, and then you see a new Duval charter going up or a new River City Science Academy going up near you, then it's like, well, that's a brand new school right there. It must be just as good. So now not only do you see better elsewhere that might be close to your community or worth the commute, you're also going to take that student out of the public education system, then, which contributes to the deficit.
Right. That's where that 15% of students leaving comes from. And I should mention too that some of the budget has been aided by some one-time COVID funding, but it's unclear the extent to which that's actually helping here. And the COVID funding has expired. Now it's not coming in the future. But yeah,
I want to take a call from John on the South Side. Good morning, John. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. Thank you for this conversation each and every week. I wanted to push back against the suggestion that the school board's decisions are based on, I guess, some racism. There were some comments made about people of color being sequestered in certain areas of town. Well, I think that's somewhat by choice. I live in the South Side. I'm white. I have neighbors that are African American on both sides of me, and Afghans across the street. But we don't consider it a white neighborhood or an Afghan or a black neighborhood. I wish we could get beyond this point of saying that this is a black neighborhood or a white neighborhood. People have choice, and with charter schools and the opportunity to move your children to outside of a neighborhood school, I think that should be taken into consideration. I wish we could give up some of this old way of thinking of this is a white neighborhood or a black neighborhood or this and that. So I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And, obviously that's a very admirable goal. Just to be clear, I think that when we were talking about that, we were talking more about in the context of the Brown versus the Board of Education early enforcement when these schools were built, which was a different period in Duval County, although it does remain.
Right. The historical context of this is extremely important. And so in these certain neighborhoods in Jacksonville, you'll see two schools very close to each other. And there's a reason why there are two schools very close to each other, is because when they were built, one was a school for the white children and one was a school for the black children. And one of the things that I always do when I research these school closings is I go back and I read about when the school was originally built from the historical archives. And so if you go back when Long Branch was built in the middle of World War I, you can see in the Times Union archives where it was built as a school for black children. And so you end up with too many schools in one area because obviously we don't intentionally segregate the schools any longer, but you have all of these buildings and there's too many buildings. And so if you compare the number of schools that are in this district where this happened to the more outlying areas of town, like District 7, closer to the southern part of the city, there you have lots of residents and a number of schools that maybe they could use more schools. That wasn't as impacted by the historical context of why these schools were built when they were built.
Got a call from Janet in the Beaches. Good morning, Janet. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. Well, here it is in a nutshell. We got 5 MAGAs on the school board, Moms for Liberty and all this stuff. Their agenda is to completely destroy the public school system in favor of a private school system, which will indoctrinate the children with the values that they want the children to have, so they'll keep them in power later in life by voting for them. So your children there will be no more public schools. You're going to have to apply to schools, and maybe they'll have a waiting list. Your child may or may not get it accepted. And this is what the future is going to be if we keep these MAGA people on the school boards. We have to get rid of them. Remember that when you go to vote.
Thanks, Janet. Appreciate your call. We also have a call from Ariane on the East Side. Good morning, Ariane. Go ahead.
Good morning. How are you?
Great.
Yes. I just wanted to make a comment about the CBA process, some of the dynamics, some of the narrative. I've been a part of that unincorporated group, but I also am a resident. I'm an intentional generational resident on the East Side, and there has been a lot of work that has happened. And so I really want to encourage our media, our community to just have an understanding that people live in that community intentionally, and that while, all of us have been working hard and people are coming to advocate for the community that they've loved historically, that's a great thing. But we have to make sure that when we are categorizing a resident, that we verify if they're a resident or if they're a business owner. And these things, it's okay to have a voice. It's okay to champion what we love and what we are passionate about. But we have to be careful about that. The other part I'll say is that because we all are lifing, we have to keep the main thing the main thing. And this, having opinions about some of our city council members, that's a distraction. The work has to move on. The construction on the stadium has already begun. So we have to get this correct.
Yeah.
And we have to stay focused. And I'm careful as a resident, as a mother, as a wife, to not be distracted and and have the discernment to recognize distractions when they're there. So again, I love the passion. I love that, but I want to affirm us and encourage that we all are accountable for what we say, how we say it, who we amplify, and what that looks like.
Marianne, thank you so much for your call. I appreciate it. I do want to move on to touch on just resolution this week in terms of a state attorney's office investigation into a police shooting. It was the 15th police shooting this year, the 10th. It's the 15th police shooting this year. It involved a 14-year-old teen who was shot basically while running from police. And it, according to the state attorney's office and a press conference that she held this week, Melissa Nelson said it was based on basically a misunderstanding during the incident. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
We have reached this factual conclusion. A rare and rapid convergence of 3 separate felonies, the auto theft, the hit and run, and the shooting, close in time and distance, led officers to logically but incorrectly believe the same Kia was responsible for all 3 crimes. The stolen car report was accurate. The connection to the shooting was not. When it was learned that the Kia was not the suspect vehicle in the shooting, this information, as I mentioned before, was dispatched over the District 1 radio channel, but not the District 5 channel. And that communication breakdown is central to this case.
So, David, I'm going to just sort of give you a minute here to explain, but that was basically Melissa Nelson saying that, the warning didn't go out on the others' channels. The police believed that this car that was fleeing, which had been stolen, had been involved in a ultimately fatal homicide. Is it surprising to hear that the dispatch was so confusing at that time, that there wasn't an effort to notify all districts of the change in the information?
Yeah, surprising to me. I mean, that's really a communication breakdown seemed to be the operative word there. It does sound like the sheriff's office is going to make some moves to try and correct that. Obviously you have a county-wide agency. You would think that would be perhaps one benefit of having one single law enforcement agency for the whole county, that you don't have those sort of gaps where you're moving from one part of the city to the other. Obviously, that really contributed then to the decision to chase the black Kia, which you wouldn't have done if there wasn't the suspicion that was connected to the murder, and it's kind of escalated from there. So definitely sounds like something that definitely needs to be fixed, so something like this does not happen again, and the officers in the field know exactly what they're dealing with, regardless of which district they're in at any given time.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Megan Mallicoat, Nakisha Williams, David Bauerlein, and Tiffany Salome via video. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, Making Space for Moms. A local author tells us about the upcoming release of her first poetry collection anchored in the realities of motherhood.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Accidents can happen when you least expect it. For decades, our attorneys have dug out the facts to help juries decide who's at fault.
More at TerrellHoganLaw.com.
News that travels with you. From the kitchen to the carpool, WJCT News 89.9 keeps Jacksonville connected with clear, reliable reporting from NPR and our local newsroom. That's why we're #1 in the morning drive.
It's Shabbos, baby.
And things are about to get wild. Film at WJCT Studios presents Bad Shabbos, a fast-paced, laugh-out-loud comedy in which a simple family dinner spirals into absolute chaos. An accidental death, or is it murder, throws two families, two faiths, and one very nervous couple into a whirlwind of secrets, slapstick, and non-stop surprises. Doors open at 6:30, film starts at 7 on Tuesday, December 9th. Get your tickets now at wjct.org/film.
On the next Florida Roundup, lines on a map. Lawmakers meet this week for the first time talking about redrawing congressional districts. This is usually a once-every-decade exercise, but the White House has pushed Republican states to revisit congressional boundaries before next year's midterm elections. Who should be counted for representation in Congress in Florida? Everyone or only U.S. citizens? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then join us Friday, noon until 1.
Spotlight on Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth as the country tries to understand a double boat strike in the Caribbean. And the Pentagon says Hegseth could have endangered troops with the signal chat. Plus, President Trump spouts hateful language about Somalis as an immigration crackdown rolls out in Minneapolis and New Orleans. It's the Friday News Roundup, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, I am joined now by a Jacksonville poet who is celebrating the soon-to-come release of her first full-length book of poetry. She's also going to be doing a reading at the Links in Gainesville. Here to tell us about it is Nicole Zwolinski. She is also a featured writer at the local author festival, which is tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah. That I have the Links information here. So it's the Links Local Author Festival tomorrow, December 6th, from 10 to 3 p.m. And they are located downtown Gainesville on Main Street.
And that, of course, is Lauren Groff's bookstore, which we've spoken to her before on this program. And she is an extraordinary author and really has a mission with the Links of trying to nurture and encourage local writers, local authors, and also just has a pretty strong stance on book availability and pushing back on book bans. And so she's been a voice for the literary community here in Florida. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing there at the festival.
I am so thrilled to be a part of it. I first read one of Lauren's books it was her first book in 2008 when I lived in Minneapolis, and we had a little book club. And so it's so surreal to know that I'm going to be there at her bookstore and be a featured local author. So there's going to be 24 local authors who will be having tables outside of the bookstore, and we'll be selling our books, and there's going to be an open mic. So I'll have 15 minutes where I will be talking about my upcoming book. I have a couple chapbooks available, and I'm going to read some poetry and just really talk about Motherhead, my new book that's coming out.
And tell us about Motherhead. First of all, what are the roots of that name, Motherhead? Where does that come from?
I love this. This is my favorite part. So, when you are pregnant, you tend to get some brain fog afterwards, and you can't remember words. And then sliding into perimenopause, you kind of experience that same thing. So it was a mashup of mom brain and brain fog, and out came Motherhead. And so that's one of the poems in the book is about that. And that's what I try to talk about, the things that people don't really talk about being a mom, like the hard, icky stuff. I want to talk about that and make sure that people feel less isolated and alone. I think I went through a lot of things as a new mom, like breastfeeding, for example. I desperately wanted to breastfeed, and the Breast is Best campaign was a huge thing, but I physically could not produce enough milk. And then there were moms online just saying, oh, just keep trying, it'll work. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes your body doesn't produce, and you do need to supplement. And there are so many restrictions about being able to even do that, even if you can produce enough milk.
And there's so many emotions and pressures around that it really can feel overwhelming for a new mom, right?
Yes. And I think that there's so many different components of motherhood that we don't talk about and we gloss over and make it seem all joyful and pretty and lovely. And while it is that, it also can be extremely overwhelming.
And so you have also created a Substack where you encourage people to kind of submit stories, thoughts, concerns, questions even that they have about this period of life.
And it's more active on Instagram right now. So I do have a Substack too, but the Instagram is a little bit more an easier way to relay that. So I have images of stories or advice people have submitted of what they experienced, and then they are able to have their name attributed to it, or it can be anonymous, and then I label it Anonymom because we're all moms here, and it's nice to kind of throw what we're going through out there. And I've had a lot of feedback from women who are like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." One of the posts was pregnancy was not enjoyable for me, and some people love being pregnant, and this woman felt very seen, and she felt this pressure to have this beautiful, lovely pregnancy, and some people are just vomiting every day, and it's not always a pretty sight. And
I think it is reassuring to hear different perspectives too. I think my own OBGYN early on told me she didn't like kids. She loved teenagers older than 12. She just really didn't like babies. I mean, even though that she was an obstetrician and that was her work. And so, people have very different feelings about motherhood and, all of the different stages of it. So it's interesting to explore. And so for folks who are interested in attending this, as you said, you've got 15 minutes to do your reading. And this is at the Links in Gainesville. Do you know what time your availability is?
I'm going to be sitting at a table from 10 to 3. So I'll be talking to people that whole day.
Okay.
I have a table. I have goodies. I have bookmarks that I'm giving away to promote my book. I'll have candy and little fun poetry games that we can play. But I will be reading at 11 for 15 minutes.
All right.
So,
well, congrats on the book. I know that it publishes this summer, the full book, Motherhead. But Nicole Zielinski, it's a pleasure to meet you, and good luck at the event tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
All right. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you missed anything, you can find all of our past and current shows at firstcoastconnect.org. And while you're there, you can sign up for our brand new daily newsletter, which includes a breakdown of upcoming guests and topics delivered to your inbox every weekday. First Coast Connect is produced by Stacey Bennett. Our associate producer is Isabella Casapow. Our show is directed by Brady Corm, and our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Join us Monday when we discuss a recent report on the St. Johns River health, including elevated levels of some pharmaceuticals like Tylenol and ibuprofen. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. Congaree & Penn, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpenn.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
President Trump's boat strikes in the Caribbean have some lawmakers alleging war crimes. So where does the buck stop? And is it even